Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Palumba. Now, today we're going to be wrapping up our discussion on focus groups. We're going to be talking a little bit today about how to report focus group findings. We're also going to wrap up a little bit on moderating. So let's get started. Okay, so with online focus groups, this is another type of focus group available to us. With the advent of technology, online focus groups have really provided us the platform by which we can run focus groups online. This is a really unique way of pursuing the right kind of sample. And it kind of reduces costs of traveling. And so it's kind of like a Google Hangout for those of you who've done it, or some sort of Skype session across maybe a few of your friends, a few of your cousins. It's that typical format. Some of the pros. First, it's cost effective, as I alluded to earlier. Second, it can be composed of participants from multiple geographic areas, reducing regional bias. Fourth, there's less pressure to offer opinions in line with the rest of the group as well. And so, because I may be in my own office, or because I may be elsewhere, it's easier for me to be able to say, okay, well, I'm in my living room. I'm not really near Jeff or Margaret who disagree with me about how well our Avengers series has been in movie theaters from a quality standpoint. I can really say whatever I want because, frankly, one is in Seattle, the other's in Miami, I'm in New York, and we're in this online focus group. So there really is less pressure to offer opinions in line with the rest of the group. It's kind of nice. Let's move along. However, there are cons. It's really difficult to create some sort of group dynamic. That's tough because you don't have people in the same room. There really is no personality connection or physical connection with any of the participants in the room. Nobody's near each other. Nobody's connecting on a friendly level or on a like-minded level. And so the moderator does have less control over the group. You don't know if other people are in the room with these focus group participants. You don't know what other people are viewing. You don't know if there are other distractions that may be manifesting in the room itself. Also, respondents must be able to type and read quickly. That's another bit of this, because sometimes respondents will be asked to answer by typing during the focus group session. You may also post questions during the focus group session for people to respond to. So it's difficult. It's difficult in that regard. It does make things a little bit murky when you're trying to conduct these kinds of group projects. Let's move along. The moderator appearance. Now, you'll notice the way that I'm dressed currently. I'm dressed pretty well. In fact, this is probably one way in which to run a focus group session. And so it's important to be able to have some sense of what the moderator should look like during a focus group session. Now, it's important to also think about first impressions here. I was running a focus group team down in Florida during my doctoral studies, and they were going to run focus groups with a poorer side, an impoverished side of Gainesville, Florida, about their banking habits. They wanted to dress up like I'm dressed up now. That really wouldn't have worked out well. That would have created difficulties. And so it's important to really think about who you are engaging with when you're running these focus groups. If these are people who may be in prison, if these are people who may be impoverished, you may want to dress down a little bit to connect better to them. You want to be sure that you are affable, friendly. You can be friendly during a happy, entertaining, engaging kind of focus group that may surround a cool new kind of soda, but you can also be somber and humble if you are running a focus group surrounding cancer and cancer recovery. You should be open to all participants, and again, The dress is important here to consider as you're moving toward running your own focus group sessions. If you're running a focus group session with your friends and your family, and they typically don't dress up, you probably shouldn't either. And it's a way in which, again, to be on their level, to not distract them, and to really gain control of the room. Of course, if you dress up a little bit more than other people, they'll also take the focus group session much more seriously. I am always dressed well when I run a focus group for a company or at a university. I find that it lets me take control over the room, and it really gives some sort of seriousness to the focus group sessions themselves. It lends itself to that. Let's move along. Moderator in the room. You are a performer. Sorry to those of you who may claim that you are introverts, but when you are a focus group moderator, you do have to perform. People are only as interested, engaged, excited, dedicated to the focus group as you are. If you don't care, they won't care. I promise you that. You have to show enthusiasm. You have to show interest. You have to show drive. You have to show poise. Participants are your audience and your objective. So you need to be sure that you are focused on them and only them. Make sure cell phones are turned off. Make sure all other distractions are turned off in the room. Make sure that your room is quiet. Make sure that your room is well lit. Make sure that your room is heated. You want your participants to be comfortable. When I was running a focus group for Nielsen at Florida during my doctoral studies, it was near a big, massive hallway that had a door that was very heavy, that slammed as people left. I didn't realize when I was running this focus group that we would hear the door slamming because a ton of classes were getting out at about 4:30 in the afternoon. That was a big, big lesson for me, as some of it was recorded on the video recorder that I used. So you want to be sure that everything is controlled. Good lighting, good temperature, quiet, and a place in which you can conduct the focus group. You want to be sure that you introduce yourself, offer an icebreaker as well. Know that you are the leader. People should know that, but people should also know that you're accessible and that you're friendly and that you know what you're doing and that you're confident. Let's move along. Maintaining focus and gaining objectives. So your focus group may be across 3 different structures: structured, semi-structured, no structure. A structured focus group interview guide means that you only ask the questions on the focus group interview guide. Now, some people may prefer this because it forces you to ask the same questions to different groups. And so you can kind of compare across the groups. However, you may lose the opportunity to ask questions. You may lose the opportunity to ask key things about things that come up during the focus group. Semi-structured means that really you'll be hitting all of the questions, but you may miss a few. You may ask a few follow-up. There may be deviations in your focus group interview guide as you carry them out during the focus group session itself. Or there may be no structure at all. You may have the focus group interview guide. You may have the set questions in front of you, but you may only use the focus group interview guide if the discussion dies down. And in fact, you may just kind of follow the discussion along with what participants are talking about. It's important to do and to conduct really good participant management. You want to be sure that everybody is comfortable in expressing themselves. If there's a fight, an argument, a skirmish, something that goes on, remind everyone politely, but with sternness, that everybody's allowed to discuss and share what they feel, how they think, but everyone is also expected to also respect each other. Anybody can have any kind of opinion in this room. And usually that's outlined in the introduction of the focus group interview guide. Generally speaking, I have not had to really do that because most of my participants have been overwhelmingly polite and receptive to all kinds of perspectives. Let's move along. Tips and tricks. Be sure interview guide possesses questions which are structured to draw rich answers. Again, the how and why stems at the beginning of your questions will help you get there. But also, before you carry out the focus group interview guide, I recommend reading through your interview guide twice. You should know where your questions are. No, you don't need to memorize 22 or 25 questions, but you should anticipate where the focus group interview guide is going as you carry it out, as you have people answer. What I recommend as you're going through the focus group interview guide is to ask a question and try to get 3 responses, right? If you have 5 people in your focus group, your goal should be to at least get 3 people to respond before moving on to another question. Additionally, you may have somebody say something interesting and you might feel free to ask a follow-up question as well. But that's generally a pretty good rule of thumb. As I said earlier, check lighting, temperature, uniformity of seats, and sound penetration from the outside. Remember, be mindful of heavy doors that may be outside the room. Only the moderator, participants, a camera person. If necessary, you probably don't need a camera person. Just have a recording device, and perhaps a second researcher for notes observation should be present. Let's move along. Additional tips and tricks. Moderators should be loose, sets mood of the room. Remember, how other people perceive you will impact how other people perceive the focus group itself. You want to be sure that you dress appropriately. You want to be sure that you have fun and you have high human engagement through and through. Let's move along. So what I'm going to show you now are some ways in which to present qualitative research. So we'll look at industry examples and we'll also look at academic examples here. Let's move along. So here, this is one way to show results from a focus group. So you can see a few things here. For one, at the bottom, I have the question itself. What question was asked to elicit this response? So Q1 at the bottom, generally speaking, what comes to mind when you think of the phrase guilty pleasure? What is an example of a guilty pleasure? Fine. At the top, where there typically is the title, that is your finding. That is your insight. That is your theme. That is what you want people to know. Viewers believe that examples of guilty pleasure included commercial items and physical relationships. Viewers listed different types of guilty pleasures, including food, sex, and shopping. I have several quotes here, which is in the middle, to help support my claim at the top. Food because it can make you fat, it's bad for your health with certain things like acne-wise or health-wise, like diabetes or allergies or stuff like that. My ex is a guilty pleasure. In terms of a guilty pleasure, it's friends with benefits. It's not like I'm in a relationship right now, but, because it was pleasurable being together. Lack of a better term, it's like a craving. Snacks, chocolate, things that are unhealthy for you. So you can see here with the quotes from the focus groups that you can see a theme kind of emerging here, and that's how I felt, and that's why I created this slide, really to capture this particular theme. Let's move along. You can see here that if we look at this focus group interview guide, you can see that there is a theme in the middle of the academic article, that they talk about their findings, and then you can see below the particular quotes at the bottom of that particular square there. So in the middle is a theme that is discussed here, a theme that is found in the focus group, and then below it you have the actual quotes. So again, kind of a similar template to what we had earlier here. Let's move along. Again, this is a different way of showcasing the same thing. Some researchers like to show or like to write about a theme first for a few lines and then show quotes. So this is another way to do it. They've kind of broken up the quotes and the themes here. And so they kind of have comments or a few lines in between the quotes of participants. All I'm trying to do here is to show you that there are different ways in which to showcase focus group information and results for that matter. Let's move along. Thematic analysis. Thematic analyses should snowball. So you may start with one insight and maybe say to yourself, yeah, most people really do like Starbucks cappuccino more so than Dunkin' Donuts, even more so than mom and pop shops. Well, that was only in this focus group. I wonder if it'll appear in other focus groups. So then you'll see, right? You'll run another focus group. You'll run another focus group. You might even run another focus group afterwards. You might say to yourself, gosh, you know what? People really like Starbucks' cappuccino. They like it way, way more than even mom and pop restaurants and even more than Dunkin' Donuts. That's interesting. I think I have a theme here because really this was discussed across all of the focus groups. All participants said the same thing, and so there must be something here. Let's move along. Extracting themes from qualitative research. So what's important here is you can start creating themes even after one focus group. You can pick things that you think really stood out. You can pick things that you think really resonated with participants and then that you talked a lot about. And so you can elaborate and refine these themes as you go through the other focus group recordings or transcripts. And then you can figure out relationships and themes, and you may even create a model or a typography from that. But that might be a little bit beyond the scope of this class. What is important, though, is that you can start anticipating themes, and then when you talk to your group members at the end of the semester, when you've all done focus groups, you'll be able to kind of see themes that might be popping out at you. Let's move along. Creating themes. You want to be mindful of the evidence you have. Do not go outside of the scope. Just because people have stated that they like Starbucks cappuccino more than Dunkin' Donuts, more than mom and pop shops, doesn't mean Starbucks is the best coffee. And it doesn't even mean Starbucks' cappuccino is the best among consumers or is perceived to be the best. It just means that it's better than Dunkin' Donuts and mom and pop shops, right? We just want to be careful about what we say here. And we want to remember that we don't generalize. If anything, we kind of gain insights in focus groups, or we get a kind of a transference of information, but there really is no generalization in focus groups. So as you can see here, there is a lot going on with focus groups. You can see that you really do have to think about the kind of problem that you want to solve. You have to think about the interview guide itself, and be sure to take a careful look at the interview guide that I have. You'll see as you go through it that there are certain subjects that are in bigger font and then have questions preceding them. And so you may see aggression, you may see reality television, you may see characters, you may see aftermath. Those are titles that really do help organize the questions. As I'm preparing for a focus group, I usually read out loud the questions in the focus group guide 2 times over. So I'll go through it once and then I'll go through it twice. It's because, again, I'm not going to be memorizing questions, but I am going to be anticipating them and getting a sense of where I am. It also helps when people are saying or mentioning certain answers to certain questions in the future that I know that I can scratch them away. And so it's important to be familiar with your interview guide. All in all, getting a sense of what a focus group is like and what you have to do to get really, really good at them, it takes practice. Qualitative research is a funny animal in that regard because it's not something that you can just do, especially since you are kind of the research instrument yourself, whether you're interviewing people or whether you're running focus groups. It's important to just remember that you're supposed to get good at this over time. Currently, you are the worst that you'll ever be at focus groups or at any kind of qualitative research. You'll only improve, I guarantee you that. And so give yourself some room to experiment, give yourself some room to mess up, quote unquote. You will get good, you will get better at it. But if you proofread through your interview guide, if you read out the questions out loud twice, if you also think about the kind of answers people may give, you will be setting yourself up for success. You absolutely will. Finally, with focus groups, it's a very tricky thing to get used to, especially since you're also watching the time. And this isn't really something that I brought up, but focus groups last for about an hour to an hour and a half. That does mean you need to have a clock somewhere in the room so that you can kind of monitor and check when time is up. Usually, in the conference rooms that I'm in, there's a clock that's in front of me. And I purposely have that there so that I can keep track of time. We also have nameplates that are usually sitting right at the table in front of us. I may take off my watch as so, and I may put it behind the nameplate because I don't want to distract participants, but I also want to make sure that they know that they're going to be let out on time. And I want to make sure that I'm doing well as I'm moving along. Judging the time and pace and flow of a focus group does also take practice. Also, as you're taking notes during your focus group, it's good to do so, especially since it motivates people to talk. if you'll notice when you viciously or vehemently are taking notes, or energetically is the right word for that. If you're energetically taking notes in front of a professor, he or she may start talking more. We have this effect. How many times have people taken notes from what you've said? Does it spur you to talk more? It does, usually more often than not. And so if during your focus group you're taking notes, and again, you don't have to write down everything, but you're listing words, bits of sentences that are important, it will typically motivate people to speak more. It's a nice little trick that I've used to really get people to talk more, to feel comfortable, and to feel validated. When somebody writes down something that you've said, you feel validated. You feel like they trust you. You feel like they're getting it. You feel like they want to know more. And so it's a really useful trick to get people to speak more so that we have rich data. Remember, your focus group is only as good as the amount of rich data that you're able to get, which is from the group dynamic itself. And a final word on the group dynamic itself. You want to be sure that you don't monopolize the conversation. Remember, you can say to people, oh, that's really, really interesting. What do you think, Katie? That's interesting too. Yeah, I've also seen that. David, you had mentioned something earlier about Big Mouth on Netflix. Whatever it may be, you're only facilitating. You want to keep your comments to a minimum as you're moving along here. Well, that's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.